right, good people, welcome back. This is part 2 of Amazon's Fallout. I am Thick Nick Fury, and what we're going to talk about now, is the part 2 of the Fallout series, which is currently on Amazon. If you guys have not seen this, if you have not played the game, uh, I don't find it necessary to do that in order to enjoy this, but it might help with some understanding. So before we get into part 2, here's a word from our sponsor.
Hey guys, Roan Industry is a veteran owned company that strives to provide better gear for better operators. To do this, they design products with only necessary moving parts, no excess fluff, and simple functionality. When you get to the checkout section, be sure to use BOW in all caps to get a 15% discount from our brothers over at Roan. All right, guys, so yeah, where we kind of left off was the ghoul versus the government, is what I like to call it. So, as you recall, he was kind of enjoying himself in the super duper mart and kind of wakes up to, I want to say, three, you can call them sheriff's deputies. I guess it's some semblance of their makeshift law around there that roll up on him and like, man, you're really in trouble now because you just wrecked the super duper mart. That's against the law around these parts. And he's like, says who? He's like, the government. So they take him off to see the president. This guy who essentially dubbed himself the president, which just happened to be an acquaintance of the ghoul from way back and knows him from going out and kind of rustling up people. And he was like, "Yeah, and you brought in like one of the baddest guys, that's ever been around. He's known for rustling up people, so to speak, in that in a cowboy lingo. I'm not very good at that, but in any event, he's kind of sitting at the table, and what he's instigating something with the younger guy, and he alludes to he shot up Philly, and the guy's like, well, wait a minute, my dad's from Philly. He's like, well, he's either dead or he's a coward because I killed everybody there. And he just kept jabbing at the guy, trying to get him to react. And I said, well, my experience, the fruit doesn't fall too far from the tree. So you're either a coward or you're not. Trying to get him to take a shot, but really to get him closer. And the president tells the other deputy, yeah, just go ahead and take his guns from him. And in the meantime, he's sewing back on the finger that got bit off, from Lucy earlier in it. And as he gets up, because he tells them essentially, well, hey, I can't let you go, right? I'm the president. What are people going to think if I let one of the baddest people around just kind of walk out of here, even though we're old friends, yada, yada, yada. And as they take him out to feed him to the hogs, so to speak, yeah, the guy's quick, right? He has a few moments where throughout the entire series where he's really quick to the gun, and really quick to kind of dodge guys and get out of the way. And he does exactly that. And he ends up shooting both guys and, just kind of turns around and has a little more conversation back and forth with the president guy. And he's like, yeah, I got one question for you. Why do you have her picture up on the wall? And it happens to be the Maldaver, that's it. Maldaver lady from earlier in the show. And the guy's like, yeah, that's Maldaver. He's like, that's not what I knew her as, because, as you would have seen by this point, he runs into her early on when he's, way before the gold times, way before the nuke and all that. And she's kind of dubbed as part of this communist outlying red faction that's trying to subvert the government. But again, the Vault Tech guys kind of bought up her business and got that technology that got planted in the one guy's head. So it ends up being, it transitions from there. He goes out, and then it moves into where you have interactions between Thaddeus and Maximus. These names, man, are awesome. But Eric will get into that here in a second.
So now we have the whole Thaddeus and Maximus storyline still going on as simultaneously as everything else is going on, and Maximus still hasn't shown who he truly is. So Thaddeus thinks it's King Titus, Knight Titus, right? And Maximus is inside the suit, like, oh man, do I tell him? Like, we're really bonding, things are going great, and then he finally does. He kind of like reveals himself, And then he describes what's happened. He's like, "Yeah, so Knight Titus died because I didn't help him," and they're like, "Oh man, you're gonna get in trouble." So now, of course, he literally does a 180, and they're no longer cool. So now Maximus is like, "I might have to kill this dude because he's gonna, give me up." And he ends up like stepping on Thaddeus's foot. So now his foot is like all broken and disfigured. And they get into this, fight. So again, Maximus hasn't really figured this suit out yet. But I'm going to say this with all respect to Star Wars, but the engineer of the Death Star must have had a side job by putting the suit together where one piece, if you take it out of the back, literally traps the user inside the suit. And I'm like, oh, that was a design flaw. Right? So I don't know if they can reclaim money on insurance, but I would be pissed if I found out that, okay, so you mean if anyone gets behind me, they can just literally keep me a prisoner in my own suit of armor. Yes. And Thaddeus just walks off with his big bag of junk and just leaves Maximus pleading with him, "Don't leave me like this. Like you can't leave me like this, right?" And he literally just walks off into the night, and Maximus is sitting in a suit, and it's starting to get hot in there because here come the roaches, and these are roaches with a capital R. Like these are nuclear infused roaches, and they will find their way in anything. If you know anything about roaches and nuclear holocaust, they survive and they thrive. So at this point, I mean, Max was just cooking in the suit, man. You can see the sweaters all on his face. I'm like, this dude is gonna die in here. And now the roaches are coming, they're crawling all over him, and they're gonna find that entry point. And all of a sudden, man, someone's blasting these roaches off of him. Who is it? It's Lucy. So now Lucy's kind of returning the favor from the town, and she kind of this is where they team up, and it's like okay, now you can kind of join her on her quest when her quest is to find her dad. And he's like I said, Maximus is always like, you know what, I want to do the greatest good that I can do. She saved me, and then he returns the favor and kind of keeps her from what is it, radiation poisoning, I believe.
Yeah,
But
gives
he
her a
he saves her.
rad gone.
Right,
Just
right.
red gone.
Yeah. So it's like one hand is like washing the other already because Lucy is already like this, uh, Debbie Do-Gooder, right? Like she's always trying to do the right thing, even though she's on a quest and she's meeting with some very, nefarious individuals. She's still staying true to herself. She's not, letting it really turn her into an evil person. And now you kind of hook up with Maximus, who's also along that same vein of trying to do the best that he can and try to be a good person. So now they team up, and as they team up, they go on their mission, which they run into some issues. They run into with these two individuals on a bridge. It's like, do you have a weapon? But like, no. Like, do you have a weapon? No. And like Lucy's like, but we do have a weapon. Like, you have to stop telling the truth, okay? Because you're gonna get us both killed. Let me handle it. He's like, give me the gun. She's like, no, we'll just walk by with our hands up. I'm like, that's never gonna work. And of course, Maxim was right because he's been on the surface a little bit. He knows these people are liars and they will try to kill you. Like, no fault of her own. Lucy's a bit naive. She's grown up in a vault underground, where everyone tells the truth and they share stuff and everyone's so pleasant. So she doesn't really know how the world works, but she finds out pretty quick. And then you find out that they're using teeth as ammo.
Mm.
So even though it kind of grazed him, he's like, "Oh yeah, it's just a graze." Like, no, you were shot with a rotten tooth, bro. Like, you're infected now. Like, that was genius. I'm like, wow. So wait, whose teeth were they? But doesn't matter. Either way, they're using projectiles that they can get their hands on, and it gives you an effect of you may not die from the shot, but you'll die from the infection. So fast forward, Maximus like, they both like pass out and they wake up in a vault. And Lucy's like, "Oh man, this is great. We're inside a vault. This is one of the best places you want to be." And this is Vault 4, which is completely different from Vault 33, 32, 31. Vault 4 is fun. I would love to be in Vault 4. The Overseer in Vault 4 is a Cyclops. And it's like everyone has some weird, like, mutation. Like, guy has a nose on his forehead, and the guy has an ear. You got people with like fingers for chins. Like, it's a whole
Bro,
bunch of weird stuff, man.
the lady with the oh my god, like the blue eyes and the kind of
Tentacles.
scraggly beard that she looked like she was out of Pirates of the Caribbean. She had the
Mm.
little
Yeah.
phalanges kind of like dangling down, and she's like looking.
Yeah,
She
she's
goes,
like
"I'm
looking at him.
sorry," and the lady just kind of writes her off, like, "Yeah, whatever,
Yep.
stupid
And
person."
the funny thing is, Maximus doesn't really see the issue, but Lucy's like, "Did you notice the Overseer has one eye. He's like, well, lots of people have one eye. She's like, but not in the middle of their forehead. He's like, oh, kind of to the left, right? So it's like it's normal, right? He's like, I've seen this. I've been up on the surface. You who only knows what kind of mutations he's run into over the course of his life. So it is very different. You can see how different their lives are, and like Max was in there. He's enjoying himself, man. He's got a robe. I mean, he's taking hot showers. He's eating caviar and popcorn. And Lucy's like, something's not right.
What
She's
is
like,
this
man,
stuff?
they're doing like seance witchcraft down here, man. This is something doesn't smell right. And she's got to go up to the one place they tell her not to, which is level 12. Of course, Lucy's gonna go figure out what's on level 12. She's just gonna ruin the whole thing, and they catch her and like, oh man, they're gonna end up killing her, right? And their way of killing you is like, we're gonna send you back to the service with 2 weeks supply of rations, and someone's gonna take it up there for you. I'm like, what? So it was just hilarious. Like I would hang out at Vault 4 just to be around those guys, because they're so freaking pleasant, and they don't have like an evil bone in their body. But yeah, that whole scene with the Vault 4 people, I would do that over and over again. I
Dude, the
actually
rope
rewound that
cutting,
part a few times.
the
Oh
rope cutting.
yeah,
He was like,
yeah.
we got to have this
Holding the
sharpened.
sword.
He's like slowly trying to.
He's like
He's like
slowly
all trying
sawing
to
through the rope.
saw. I mean, the sword looked like it was something out of an old William Shatner Star Trek, like fight scene type sword, or
Made out of
Flash Gordon.
plastic. It's a hard plastic.
Yeah, that was insane. Or the toilet, the instructions on how to flush the toilet.
Right, right.
It's like people keep
The part I
messing it
liked
up.
was Maximus actually in this whole time is like living the life of luxury. He's like, wait, what are you talking about? Shower with hot water? Like
Right.
he gets his little slippers and he's got his bathrobe and he's eating caviar and he's like, oh my god, who wants to leave?
Right.
We
And
got to leave, but they gave me a robe.
he
Right?
literally saw her like being dragged by the window, and he sat there for a minute like,
You're good.
He took another.
like,
he took
a
another
deep
handful
breath.
of the popcorn. He was like,
He's like,
oh gosh, I
I
gotta
guess
go.
I should. But it's funny because he literally starts going ham on these people. I mean, they're the nicest people, and he's like throwing people around and coming to save Lucy. And she's like, no, they were gonna let me go. And he's like, oh, oops. Someone needs to check on that guy. Like the guy's just groaning on the ground because he just like tossed him around. But yeah, like Vault 4 is definitely. I hope we go back to Vault 4, man. I am not done with those people there.
Dude, yeah. I mean, Vault 4, I'll get it to you. Vault 4 was definitely interesting and fun times for all. I think they were worshiping like Moldaver, like a banner of her.
Yeah.
So she definitely plays a key role in the show. She may not. I'm willing to say. Well, I know she's not even the ultimate, villain. She ends up seemingly to become a kind of a good guy of sorts. And jury's out on who's actually the ultimate evil person. At least for maybe the next season. But from there, you kind of get into where Lucy ends up eventually getting to the point where she meets Moldaver. She's got the renewable power source or whatever, and essentially like, yeah, you want your dad back. We want that renewable power source. So she hands it over, but the kind of the key in it all, besides Moldaver knowing Lucy's dad and kind of knowing his background and knowing that, well, this guy's actually been alive a lot longer than you think or that he looks. He knows their mom, and this entire time leading up to it, right? Lucy thinks her mom died and that she was buried by the dad and another character in her, Betty Pearson, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, lo and behold, that ends up not being a real story. But Moldaver needs Lucy's dad to punch in this master code to activate this source, because this power source, because when they bought up the companies, got a hold of this power source to ensure that they only had control of it, they got to put some code in there into the thing to essentially lock it down. So the only people that could turn it on and they can control everything would be Vault-Tec, right? Because Vault-Tec, essentially, they have this thing from the beginning called fiduciary responsibility, which essentially equates to, well, we got these vaults, and in order, for us to make money and keep making these vaults, well, there has to be a reason for the vaults. They can't just sit around. Well, we got a great idea, and this comes out early on. Let's start a nuclear holocaust, because that's going to make people want to be involved, so we can continue to build that and other tech. So they want to control, just like all these other factions, everything, or at least, a monopoly of sorts of all the things that are available, resources and the like. But at this point, at this meeting, you got a kind of old, crusty looking, Walking Dead type ghoul sitting at a table, nice little banquet set out there with real food, big and everything. And MalDAV goes into explaining to Lucy that, oh yeah, yeah, I knew your mom, and yeah, your dad should tell you the real story. And he's trying to talk her out of it. And lo and behold, she has some flashbacks to actually the cornfields, which you would have seen earlier with her mom when she was, a young girl. And she gets it a little clearer. She sees MalDAV and her mom talking to MalDAV, and she sees the necklace or necklace, yeah, around her mom's neck. And that necklace is kind of infused in the skin of this ghoul that's sitting at the table. It's like, yeah, that was your mom's, and your mom, and it was your dad's fault. So of course, Lucy's, like, what's going on? This is like a huge moment. And she essentially turns, on her dad to a degree. And he's trying to convince her, like, no, I love you. Let's just leave, and all this stuff. And then, Maximus makes his way in there. I think it's Maximus at that time, or was it the ghoul? No, it was Ghoul. The ghoul makes his way in there, and he ends up taking a shot at the dad, and dad gets in, and Maximus is there, and then gets into the suit. Like, there's a whole thing going on because the Brotherhood of Steel has kind of tracked everything down, and they're on their way in. You can hear them coming. But that's kind of where that scene leads to, and then eventually kind of going off into the sunset. Lucy and the ghoul going off in the sunset to follow her dad, because once he jumped into that suit, he took off to God knows where. And we believe that they give you a pretty good idea where that is later on, which is a good linchpin into the second season. But he's like, hey, are you coming? And yeah, she decided to go because Maximus lying on the deck, knocked out. He's outside of the suit. Power source is still there, but they head off into the sunset and then into the Hollywood Hills, kind of going after her dad at this point.
Yeah, so real quick before we finish this bad boy up, we got to talk about the big roundtable sequence that happens just before I think we see the shot of New Vegas. Kyle MacLachlan, when he lands over there, it's obviously going towards Vegas, and that's a reference from Fallout New Vegas that takes place between Fallout 3 and 4. It is considered canon now, so that was cleared up. But the roundtable is a past timeline, and one of the things that I want to discuss real quick is that past timeline and what was still happening at Vault 33 while this is all going on in the show. Chronologically, it makes a little bit more sense to do it this way. But basically, what ends up happening is the ghoul, as Cooper Howard back in 2077, starts to become disenfranchised with being Vault Tech's, like, mascot for the vaults and everything else like that. He wants a quieter life. He wants to get his wife out of the business and just live at a peaceful ranch with him and his daughter and his wife, and just live out the rest of their days. You can start seeing it's starting to fracture him a little bit. He gets invited by a co-star from a previous movie to basically like it would be like an underground meeting. Back in the 50s, it would have been like a communist sympathizer meeting. Basically, anybody that goes against what Vault-Tec or the government is doing is deemed like one of these folks that's being targeted. And he meets MalDAV in 2077. She's younger, and she's kind of like heading in this front of, we don't know if she's an insider or not. We don't know how she ages. We still don't know by the end of the season. But she has been a key figure in trying to expose Vault-Tec for what they are and what they're trying to do. And she kind of like leads him to doubt his wife and offers up a hearing or a listening device. He plants it on his wife, and then that comes to the sequence where his wife is actually at a VIP round table discussion inside of a closed environment with some of these power players. Fans of the game will know exactly who they are. I had no idea who they were, so I didn't realize their significance, but they're all the power players from the games. So you got, I think it's Big MT, which is a tech-based company. You've got Mr. House. He's supposed to be like the villain of New Vegas. So we'll see. And basically all these heads of these mega corporations are at the table with Vault-Tec, and Vault-Tec is trying to get them to buy in on their vaults. and basically Cooper's wife offers up to she basically states that, like, if we want to cash in on the vaults and the usefulness of them, then what's stopping us from launching the nukes themselves? Now, I would say it's not an admission of guilt per se, but it is something to ponder, and it's an interesting point. Um, and so you see all these big power players. I suspect some of them are going to populate further on into the show. It makes sense, but while Cooper is in his wife's office listening to this entire conversation on the earpiece, he's introduced by Betty, his wife's secretary, by his biggest fan, this dude named Hank. It turns out to be Henry, which turns out to be Lucy's dad. And that was one of the biggest things. Like when she said at the very beginning, when Lucy met the ghoul, he was like, "Hey, my name is Lucy McLean." He knew the name. And that's why he's been so interested in trying to follow her and see if he can get some information from her in the current timeline. And basically, the ghoul feeds into that information when they're countering the dad too. And the other thing that we failed to mention was Norm, Lucy's brother, stayed behind in Vault 33. Kind of a timid person, doesn't want to really go out. He's a little nervous, obviously, and he starts doing his own investigation in the background. Now, if you get to episode 8 and you're looking at, his wife's secretary, Betty, happens to be the new overseer of Vault 33, there's the connection. And then what ends up happening is Norm finally makes his way into Vault 31, and that's when another connection from the past shows up as a Roomba. And he is basically a Vault-Tec HR manager nerd that is basically been turned into this. Yeah, his name is Bud. He's been turned into like this overseer of this vault that houses all of Bud's buds, his manager HR program that he's trying to get off the ground, and he's frozen all of these Vault-Tec personnel, and they're using them as a gene pool to create the ultimate HR manager, which that's terrifying. And and then so at the end of the season, Norm is locked in that vault with Bud the Roomba and doesn't have a way out. And the Roomba looks at him and is like, "Hey, you can either go to sleep or you can die of starvation." And that's where we're left off with that. And then it goes back to the roundtable discussion where you start seeing the true villainy of some of these corporations that are willing to sacrifice the entire population. And they got the creative idea that they could go in there and be like, Vault-Tec's like, "We're willing to sell you the vaults and you can do with them as you please." And like, there's truly some evil shit that these people are capable of conjuring, that they're using it as an experiment. It's just wild. Like, what if one of the vaults doesn't seal all the way? What if we overstock with population? What if we strip kids away from parents and kill the parents? Like, they're looking at ways to explore like how humanity can be at its best or at its worst, and then how they can still come up with evil shit at the end. It's just gross, but it makes for good television.
There you go. Kind of like Purge on steroids.
Yeah.
Can you afford Vault insurance?
Yeah, that Vault 31 also, to note, like when her brother started doing his investigation, looking into everything, he saw that every overseer for Vault 33 came from Vault 31. Every single one. And then even some that were in Vault 33, like the blonde she was a key player in that, the offensive, but on the defensive side of the house.
She's something. There's no way she's not something bad.
Well, yeah, she was in the system as coming from Vault 31, if I remember.
Okay.
Yeah, she came from Vault 31. So you started seeing everybody's coming from Vault 31. And I think that was one of the key things that sparked his interest to get into Vault 31. Okay. And he essentially just faked being Betty on the computer. It was like, "Hey, the plan's not working out. I need to come back." And it's like, "Yeah, come to Vault 31 real quick." He wants to see what's going on there. And that's when he runs into, I'll call that little brain Krang from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So it's like this little brain inside of a fishbowl on top of a Roomba with a needle that's chasing him around and stuck behind a mop. Like Grant said, and he's kind of running that vault, and that vault was only as deep as the people that he had frozen in there. It didn't have all the amenities and the cornfields and the housing and all that stuff. It was essentially just to house those bodies. There was nothing else to that vault. So really, he was in a position where he was going to have to starve, or and die that way, or he would have to freeze himself. and, kind of see, hey, where do things go from here? But yeah, that was another key connection, between Betty and between some others that have come from that vault, because Vault 31 was consistently popping up every overseer, and everybody that seemingly won elections for becoming the overseer, they were Vault 31 Bubbas.
Can't wait to see where this show goes. Can't wait.
Oh yeah, man. I think it's
2
great.
years before season 2 comes out with the way things
Probably.
have been going.
They better not do that. Come on, Amazon.
Yeah,
You guys got to work
let's
with us
go.
on this.
Come on, you get us while you got us. Okay.
Yeah, you don't have
Let's
to dump
not
all 8.
do this. Let's not play these games. We're gonna have a season 2. Don't tease it. Just do it. Come with it.
I think they're going to go out to at least 4. In my opinion. Prove me wrong in the comments, but I think they're going to go to at least 4 seasons. Obviously 2, but I say at least 4. I can see it. They have the material.
And you are getting a little bit of star power. Like I said, we have some cameos. Eric Estrada from Chips. I know you younger people don't know who that is, but as part of my
it's
childhood,
a big deal.
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal.
Punch.
So it definitely has a following, and it has a following that people kind of want to get involved in. It's a fun show to watch. I'll admit, for me, it started out a little bit slow. I'm like, I can't get through this, but it does pick up, and it's fantasy. It's definitely something. Don't sit in there and say, "Oh man, this makes no sense." It's not going to make sense. It's one of those. Okay, this is how things happen. There's no real realism, because it's in the future. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, even though history does repeat itself. So a lot of these cars look like they're from the 50s, but it's from 2050. So it definitely is a fun show. It's entertaining. I'm looking forward to season 2. I definitely am. Like I'm invested enough to really want to see where this goes and how they progress the stories. And like I said, Maximus's development right now is my paramount concern. I know the Ghoul is going to do his thing, and and I think they're going to be formidable. Him and Lucy and Maximus as a little trio.
Oh yeah,
I think that's where we're headed. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And a Easter egg note for you guys who are interested, or maybe you caught it during that roundtable discussion, kind of up in the rafters is somebody off in the shadows or whatever, which I think is probably going to be maybe the big villain. Who knows? That one shows up in season 2 or 3 or 4. Maybe this thing goes on for a while. But essentially, like, there's a grand mastermind kind of pulling the strings of things, of the people sitting around that table, to include potentially the Ghoul's wife, right? Jury's out on her for me. Is she bad? Is she good? Don't know. I mean, she did some bad stuff for sure. Who knows what the motives are? But great show though.
Yeah, can't recommend it enough, man. Like, honestly, probably the best TV show I've seen in a year. Absolutely loved it. I'm with Eric though. The first few episodes, not being a fan of the game, it was a little bit of a challenge to try to get that moment where that that hook is nice and settled into you. After about episode 3, man, I was all in, and I've watched the show 2.5 times at this point.
Wow. Yeah, I'm still trying to get through the first. So I'll admit I didn't get to the last episode, but everything I saw, it makes sense. Shout out to our key grip, Charlie Marroquin. Like, let's not forget that. Like, we're kind of we're sorry about that, Charlie, to put you at the end like that, but we appreciate everything you do out there.
Yeah, man. So we're gonna do something a little bit new on this rating scheme. Hey, if you guys want to hear us do an episode by episode breakdown, this entire show launched at once, so it's kind of our thought was to just do down and dirty. We obviously there's a ton that we didn't cover. Highly recommend you go back and watch the show and dig into the lore, man. It's awesome. Moving forward, though, this show is it's the furthest along in the timeline, according to the show runner and Todd Howard, the creator on from Bethesda. Sorry. So if you guys want us to do an episode by episode review, totally down to do it. You just gotta let us know. But hey, man, big thumbs up for me. I absolutely loved it. So can't wait for season 2.
It's a thumbs up for me too.
Yeah, I want to say it gets 2 Vault Boy thumbs up for me. Great show, man.
Siskel and Ebert.
Yes, Siskel and Ebert for us old guys.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap it up for Beards of War on Fallout. So let us know what you think in the comments. And go check it out, man. Great show.
Subscribe.